Right. So, in this lesson, we will take a look at the Python documentation. Before we begin, let me say how certain documentation has been organized may change over time. In other words, we can expect that people will update the website where it has been stored, or that they will improve the content and the way it is presented. Therefore, please focus on the essence of this lecture and disregard any visual and organizational details. There are a few ways to access the Python documentation. The first one is to go to the official website of Python, which is python.org. Then one option would be to click on Docs up here. Here it is. You just access the documentation, perhaps for the first time. If you go back, you can hover over this bar where it says Documentation and access the Python documentation by pressing that button. See? You just arrived at the same web page. Alternatively, you can just Google Python documentation to obtain a link to the same web page as a result. Whichever of the three ways you choose, you will end up here, which is the web page where the current version of the docs has been displayed. As a matter of fact, this is the place where you can get the most up-to-date information about all Python features. In addition, you can look around to see various tools that can improve your user experience. To highlight a few, let me start by saying that previous versions of the documentation of the programming language are continuously kept, and you're given access to them. For instance, in this column on the left, you can see which version is stable, which contains security fixes, and that the last one is, as usual, in development. When a version is in development, it means that it has not been finalized yet. That's why unless you would like to take a quick look into the future, you would normally like to use the latest stable version. At the moment of recording this video, this is the 3.8. If you'd like a full list of documentation versions, you can click on All Versions here, and then choose the one of interest. Otherwise, as you go back, you can also change the version by expanding this list and selecting the one you like. Since 3.8 is the latest stable version, let's go for that one. Another interesting piece of information, which you can find as you scroll down the page, is the FAQs. They contain answers organized into several subcategories. FAQs are very convenient because it allows you to quickly find additional information, if available. After you've finished with reading the FAQs, you can go back to the main page of the documentation by clicking on the documentation link in the top bar here. The last thing I would like to share with you about navigating through the documentation is the Quick Search button. It is located in the top right part of the screen. For instance, let's look for more information about tuples. Interestingly, the first few results don't even contain the word tuple. However, if you click on the first link that actually does contain this word, which is built-in types, we can access a page where information on tuples has been provided. Instead of scrolling down so much to get that piece of information, we can take advantage of the table of contents provided on the left and click on Tuples. Great! Although the search button is very helpful, you have to take into account that it is the documentation itself that may seem to be organized in a very chaotic way at first. Therefore, you might need to spend quite a while before you know how to quickly obtain the information you need. Nevertheless, once you turn this into a habit, you will have probably the richest and most precise definitions of the given terms and tools at your fingertips, at least from a technical perspective. As an extra exercise, let's scroll back to the top and look for information about the extend method. Here's a new trick. Since the method we are referring to is one that applies to the lists class, the way we should look for it is by typing list.extend. As we do that, we obtain relevant information in the sixth result of our search, related to data structures in Python. When we click on the corresponding link, we can see an exact description of that method. Awesome! Actually, in many situations, Jupyter can help us obtain the information we need from the documentation in a much more convenient way. Let's go to the Jupyter Notebook file. Here we have created list 1, and we would like to extend it with the elements contained in a second list, list 2. Once we've typed the name of the list and placed the dot operator, we can press the Tab button. This will prompt Jupyter to provide us with a few suggestions on the methods we could use here. Since append starts with the first letter of the alphabet, it is logically on the top. Down the list, we can see extend as well. Click the Enter button from the keyboard to choose it. Then, open parentheses, and while you're still in them, type only the first few letters of the name of List 2. Then, use tab completion. This means you can press the tab button to obtain a few suggestions, one of which is namely the one you need, List 2. Select it and press Enter again. Referring to the Python documentation again, while your cursor is still between the parentheses, hold the Shift button and press up to 4 times the Tab button to obtain information about the extend method in different ways. I must admit that the documentation displayed by Jupyter is not as comprehensive as the one you can find from the official Python website. Nevertheless, this Jupyter tool is a real killer. It is extremely useful because it saves you the time to always go online and look for information describing the functionality of a certain method. As a side note, let me show you how this Jupyter tool also works for functions. For instance, as you type the string function, you can place your cursor between the parentheses, hold Shift, and press Tab to obtain information about this built-in function as well. Great! This is all we had to say about the Python documentation at this stage. Feel free to spend more time on it if you feel like, but better do so after you've finished the entire course and have gained the confidence of an independent user. Thank you for watching.